It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up.
Yeah, welcome to our panel about smart cities, green buildings and infrastructure. So, as you may have seen the different company names, it first pops up infrastructure. But we want to discuss it brighter, in a brighter way. They are not silos. We have to work closer together in these areas, but before we're stepping into a deeper discussion, it would be great to have a first round so that each of you tells what about you're responsible on, and if it pops up smart city or smart building, what comes in your mind?
Yeah. Happy to do so. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm Anna Jasper-Martens, and I'm responsible for the energy infrastructure solutions business at E.ON in Germany. And what does that entail? So across Germany, we run district heating networks. We provide industries with smart energy solutions, especially heating solutions. And we provide exactly those heating solutions also to city quarters and to retrofit areas, so where city quarters are made energy sustainable for future purpose. And to fuel all of that, also sustainable energy provision, we also run a large renewable energy assets, so PV and wind. And when it comes to smart cities, of course, that is an important part, right? 40% of the CO2 emissions in Germany are due to heating energy emissions in the city. So decarbonizing that is a big part of making cities smart. And of course, this entails also the building blocks, right? So enabling and making buildings more energy efficient is a huge part also of making cities smarter and more sustainable, to only name two. But there are more areas of smart cities.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Jobbins. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer and Head of Strategic Partners for Vodafone Business. And Vodafone Business, obviously you'll know Vodafone for connectivity, for your mobile phone connectivity, I certainly hope so. And if you're in business, we also provide mobile connectivity and fixed connectivity. But what a lot of people don't know, and that's the division that I work in Vodafone Business, is that we're also the world's largest provider of IoT connectivity. So we connect over 175 million sensors around the world. And in order to make a city smart, you want to have sensors deployed so that you can measure and manage the energy utilization, the lighting utilization. You can optimize supply chains, make sure that car fleets are taking the most effective route, and perhaps finding an EV charger and not driving around the block 4 or 5 times, which of course is wasting energy. So I think it was an interesting point about the 40% heating in Germany, because close to that number, I think it's 38% of the world's carbon emissions are caused by the building and construction sector in particular. So it's not only the building itself, the infrastructure management, the energy management, but all components of that we need to take a look at.
I don't need to do any more numbers now. Thanks for that. And thanks for having me. I was actually a little bit surprised to be invited to that stage. I'm really thrilled to be here. The reason why I was surprised is because the company that I represent leaves the single largest carbon footprint in Berlin. 4.6 million tons of carbon a year. So to put it into perspective, I'm responsible for the decarbonization of the entire city. And why that is the case, the ladies just explained, it's about the building stock. So we are transforming the energy industry in order to make our building stock way more efficient. And we cannot do that alone, and that is why I'm very pleased to have that fellow colleagues with me on stage. And Anna, please allow me, when I was walking around today on that fantastic exhibition, I was just visiting the E.ON hall, just to put it like that. And then I watched on one of the big screens that says it's on us. We are going to decarbonize Berlin. And then I said, yes, welcome to the city. I think we need everyone to make their transformation happen. So thanks for having you.
Thank you very much, Christian. I am not aware that it says that, but of course, as you know, we are also a district heating provider in Berlin, right, with the BTB, and we are also there decarbonizing. I need to check that claim.
Yeah, I love it. So welcome. Cool. Be confident.
Yeah.
So Martin, what about you?
So maybe first reaction, so I'm already super happy because we have a lot of super relevant perspectives and capabilities already touched in this round, in these 2 minutes or so, I guess. My name is Martin. I'm head of sustainability for Siemens Smart Infrastructure. We provide technology for power grids from really microgrids to national scale. And we provide technology for buildings. And in that sense, we're quite often critical enablers for renewables integration, for energy efficiency, and for electrification.
So you guys gave me a lot of figures, but allow me to point out another figure. I think then we are all aware about what is needed in the future, and let's talk about the transformation. The transformation of our cities and the infrastructure, and the forecast. And we are only talking about Germany, not about Europe or the world. It is needed 720 billion euros until 2030 to get our whole energy sector fully renewable. And I think, just imagine about that large figure. So let's go deeper into transformation. Martin, why and how do cities and industries need to transform their infrastructure, and how can we get more greener?
So for the why, I think I will simply refer to the fact that we are exceeding planetary boundaries, literally as we speak and on a daily basis. And for the how, I think I would focus on decarb. There's more than decarb and sustainability. I'll focus on decarb to begin with. Here, we need to continue with increasing renewable power supply, one thing, increased energy efficiency and increased electrification. And regarding electrification, I think many of us are not fully aware that currently only 20% of the energy consumed worldwide is being consumed as electrical energy. So the rest is still burning fossil fuels for heat or for transport. So these 20% need to go up. And if we're then thinking infrastructure, that translates to that the electrical infrastructure needs to be expanding. And for that, in turn, we need physical expansion, but also digital expansion, slash, I might say, green tech.
Good. Absolutely. Then, Amanda, we already heard about the claim. It's on us. So how can companies contribute towards greener and more livable cities?
Yeah, thanks, Stefan. I think there's a couple of things that businesses can do. Obviously, many of the businesses here are involved in innovation and R&D around the solutions that can help us to decarbonize and eliminate waste. And I think also, when we look at things like plastics as well, all of these components play in our climate story. So R&D from businesses, number one. Number two, of course, our organizations must be focused on decarbonizing their own production. At Vodafone, I'm very proud to say that since 2021, we've powered our European network on 100% renewable energy sources. And we're working to get that in Africa too. It's much more tricky in Africa. Our base stations are powered by generators. Many of those generators need fossil fuels. We're looking at hydrogen solutions now, actually. So making sure that your own organization is decarbonizing and setting a standard for others. We're also working on products and solutions for our own customers to help them avoid their own carbon emissions through things like IoT, but also other solutions in the connectivity space.
Let's stay with the companies. Christian, with your company, you're responsible for the heating, more or less, here in Berlin. Just backstage, we had a discussion if maybe in the future it will be the cooling of Berlin. Yeah. But nevertheless, in both cases, we have to talk about decarbonization. Yeah, how can we proceed there? What do you or your company have in mind? What are the next steps to get there any further?
Today we come out of a world full of fossil fuels, so that is what we are doing. So imagine the Berlin heating system. It consists of more than 2,000 kilometers of pipes with hot and cooler water. We have 11 sizable power plants across the city, and we basically burn gas and partially still coal. So what we are going to do is to transform the entire energy system into a more renewable energy system. So as of 2030, we will increase the portion of green energy from 5 to 7%, where it is today, up to 40%. So how can we do that? We have already heard about electrification. Of course, that is the name of the game. We see a general trend that the PV and the wind installations are on a good way forward, actually. To be honest, that is something we can see in Germany. So we also can then introduce electricity into the heating sector. As we speak, for example, there's a couple of 100 meters away from here, we built one of the largest heat pump installations across Europe, 75 megawatt. So that is sizable. You can decarbonize like that 75,000 households by only one project. So that is what we are trying to do. But of course, we build those systems, in particular for winter times, when it's very cold. So the system design in Berlin is meant to provide heat, even if it's 14 degrees minus, and the largest generation unit in the area falls down, so to say. So then we have a security of supply. So we also need fuels that can be stored. Today it's often molecules, but it's also partially biomass. So that is kind of the technologies that we foresee. But what I would like to introduce here is, it is all about being smart. So what I talk is a lot about the physical world, power plants, pumps, all that. But what does smart in that context mean? So what we have done jointly in the city is we have analyzed the water system in the city. And what we have found is that there is a sizable volume of heat that you can utilize from the wastewater system. So that is what we are doing all across the city. We put our grid above the water grid and find those places where we can utilize easily all the excess heat from the grid. And that shows it's not only about being smart, it's also about bringing infrastructures together.
Exactly. Yeah.
Shifting the interfaces. I mean, you are from the housing industry. Today, we provide hot water into the basement. Why are we doing that? Why don't we think one step or two steps further into the building infrastructure? So that is where the music plays, I would say, and there I'm really looking forward to solutions like the one you mentioned, Amanda, digitalization, digital twins of buildings, get a better understanding of how that bloody thing works. So that is where we need to be.
Let's step into that. So you're talking about a lot of hardware, so pipes and even the water or biomass, but at the end and even the future is more digital. So
Absolutely.
Amanda, I know that Vodafone is working on a lot of solutions for that, because it starts with the grid, which has to be there,
Yes.
but then going deeper into the solution. So what are you doing on that?
There's a lot of similarities, of course, between a mobile or connectivity network and an energy network. So, but yeah, we've been working with Suez, the waste water management company, for example, to deploy 2 million IoT sensors into the water systems over the next 5 years. And that, I'm sure you guys all have experienced this. There's a lot of leakage in our current old city, Paris, Berlin, London. The water system is 100 years old or more, and there's massive leakage in those pipes. So by deploying these sensors, we're able to help Suez find leaks quicker and then repair them. And it's already anticipated that'll have a saving of around 15% for that deployment alone. There are a huge number of applications, and I think the one thing that struck me from yesterday's awards session is just the incredible ingenuity of everybody. I mean, I don't know what you guys think, but that story about, I can't remember the name of the company, so forgive me if they're here, but the ones that were painting hard surfaces with photosynthesis technology, I mean, come on, it's incredible. The ingenuity, the creativity, and that's what really gives me great hope when I come to an event like this. You know, we all need to apply our brains and think outside the box. There are lots more solutions I can talk about in a minute, but that gives you one.
So, Anna, let's bring these different things together, hardware, software. You have a concrete example for us, what you're working on, or a best practice on the market where we're bringing these things together.
Well, I think we have several projects where we bring these things together. I mean, one project that is tangible right now is here, Messe Berlin, right? Where we are also, on the one hand, refurbishing the heating and cooling system, and via intelligent technology and digital technology, optimizing the whole system. I mean, that's a very tangible example. But another example, exactly also, where we integrate also heat pumps into the system. It's about really making use of all existing heat sources like wastewater, river water, bringing them through heat pumps into district heating systems that, through their technology, then continuously decrease their carbon content. But if you think even a bit more, right, in the green room we discussed also, these are the big chunks, but what about the small chunks, right? Making use of every element that you find, especially also waste heat, yeah, and integrating waste heat then, or low heat production into the whole system, makes it a holistic system. The trouble with that, if you then also need to add, for example, fluctuating renewable energies into the system, you get into, of course, the need of having proper storage. Do you store it electrically? Do you store it in the heating system? But to manage suddenly this very complex system, you need digital solutions, and you need people that want to do it together with you, right? We need partners to make this happen from the industry, but also from the political world and universities, right? To be able to also support all customers and the people in the end that live in the cities with sustainable, reliable, and in the end, affordable energy, which is a huge challenge.
You three, we're talking about a more or less hidden world. So it's, for most of us, not really visible. It's water, waste, something which goes just behind. But Martin, for example, thinking about all what is needed in the future, will the cities or the buildings look like today? Will it be totally different? Just think about mobility and other aspects. So how will the future city look like?
So if it was visible, I think probably it would look still about the same, but we would make smarter use of it in many cases. So I like the concept of squeezing out more from infrastructure. And one example there is, for example, going back to electrical infrastructure, to operate electrical grids closer to the real physical limits, because we often have quite large safety margins in there. And another notion may be building space utilization. If you improve building space utilization by 10%, that ultimately translates to a lot of steel and concrete that we can save. And yeah, I think you were also asking about mobility, maybe building the bridge to sector coupling that we came across already. If I hear mobility, I think electric vehicles, primary purpose, of course, transportation, but hopefully, increasingly in the future, also grid stabilization. So there we have the notion of demand response or bidirectional charging. And if we make that work, that would be beautiful.
I'm very glad to say that we have a company that does do that, actually. Sorry, a bit of a plug. We have a division called PairPoint that actually enables cars and EV chargers to communicate machine to machine, and also helps with elements like fleet management. So there are a huge number of solutions, I think, coming up.
We're doing it with Ford in the US, so there are some good, good cases going on already.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's very interesting.
We were talking that these systems, or most of the systems, are not visible, but they are getting visible if they are not working for all of us. So you're responsible, or with your companies for, but I think even what we have in front of us, the huge amount of what I said at the beginning, the billions of billions which are needed, but I think it's not only the money, we as well need a perfect framework from the authorities, from the politics, So Christian, what would be the perfect framework for your company and for all what is needed for the future transformation?
When I prepared myself for that panel, I enrolled my list of requests that I usually have when I meet politicians. But I just want to take one moment to reflect to yesterday evening when we have had that wonderful session and Amanda introducing the 3 nominees in the category youth.
Amazing, huh?
And that went so close to my heart to understand and listen firsthand that the global south is affected by our behavior. So I was rethinking what to say today on that question, and I would say it is not only our responsibility as industries, but it is also a political necessity to raise and increase the awareness of the consequences, of the severe consequences that climate change has on the way human beings live on that planet.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that is so essential that you cannot say that often enough. So that is something I took from yesterday evening with me, and that is one of the claims I would make towards politics. And of course, you're right on a more technical level. You need to have a better regulatory framework. You need to create an understanding how things work, how the interconnectivity works between industries. Because as of today, many of the authorities and also politicians are within their boundaries, take decisions there. So also widen the perspective here would be very beneficial. And then maybe last point from my side on that, I think many of the things that need to be done in the very first place, they don't necessarily create a business case right away. We need to understand that, and we need to maybe subsidize or do different things in order to make it happen. You mentioned the number. That number is so huge. The finance stability of the companies, they don't allow those investments. So we need partnerships, we need subsidies, and we need a very consistent regulatory framework. But first and foremost, we need to create awareness for the topic that we are discussing here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if I may add to that, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And the event yesterday brought again back to my mind the why we are here, right? Why we do this and why we are working so hard on all the technicalities, right? Of decarbonization and asking ourselves how we do it and what are the technical solutions. It's because we need to save the climate, right? And we need to stop that, and we need to start with that now. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. We need a stable commitment also from politicians regarding the regulatory framework so that we know what we do, because these investments, this work, is a long-term shot, right? It's not a year or two, it's 10 years, it's 20 years, it's 40 years in advance. And for that, we need the commitment for the whole of the society, especially politicians then, that we are able to do that.
Even with, you mentioned partnerships.
Yes.
So maybe Amanda, with your background, even from the UK, I think it was one of the first countries really developing on public-private partnerships.
Yeah, we've done a lot actually on public-private partnerships, Vodafone Business, for example, actually all over the world. A couple that I can tell you about. For example, in the UK, we did a partnership with the Lancaster City Council to deploy video surveillance for safety, security, and also for congestion management. And we did that using narrowband IoT, which has much lower power requirements, and the cameras themselves could be powered by solar. So you had a much simpler implementation and deployment, and that was up and running kind of immediately. Some of the other projects we've done include the Safety Transportation for Europe platform, STEP, which we've deployed with the EU. Malaga, for example, have worked with us on that. And also on the island of Ibiza, you'll be glad to know, we've helped them have safe beaches, smart beaches. Why do you think does that matter? Because you could have a look and see how congested a given beach is, and that means you don't drive there and then drive to another beach because it was too busy to start with. So again, these small changes actually are going to add up to a huge contribution. And I think the last thing I would say is that in the EU recovery funds, there is still money on the table, as I understand it, for those of you that are working in cities here or in local government, for you to apply for for the continued digitalization of your towns and cities. And I think, again, it comes back to, frankly, the sort of sweat equity or cognitive equity we all need to put into thinking about these solutions, realizing when we come together like we are now that it's not hopeless. A lot of the dialogue is like a catastrophe, planetary boundaries, and what does that do? It causes us all to do nothing, right? But you come here and you realize there's so much you can do, so much everybody is already doing, and your contribution is going to matter, and that tiny little change you can make will add up to what we need to achieve as a whole planet.
So time is really ticking away, but maybe for each of you a short closing sentence. So close your eyes and just imagine how urban sustainability will look like in 10 years. So we'll meet in 10 years here once again. What has changed, what still exists, and what you personally contribute to it. Martin, we'll start all the way.
So maybe in 10 years, we'll see that finally all the available technology has been implemented, because that's a huge part of the issue. Yeah? 2/3 of the problem are solved technologically, I think. Then I hope that will be combined with exciting innovations that we also see here on site. When it comes to personal contribution, probably never enough if you think personal. Beyond that, I think I'm lucky that I work for Siemens Smart Infrastructure, because, we offer a lot of what's required for sustainability, and I sort of relate to that.
Okay, Christian.
In 10 years from now, so let's say 35-ish, I can promise you that the prerequisites in Berlin will be ready to be carbon neutral as of 2040 when it comes to district heating. So that is where I will work with all my passion and heart that this will happen. And I'm confident that we get there. And maybe we also have a more digital world. We have embraced the customers, the buildings, so everything that is close to our business, and that is then even more efficient than I can imagine today. So as I said, today look very much on tangible assets, distributing hot water throughout the city. But my promise is 35, we will be ready to be climate neutral 5 years later.
Fantastic. By 2050, we'll have 70% of the world's population living in cities, and in Europe we've got 800 cities. So we need those to be digitally connected, and ideally on 5G, so we can provide a lot of these innovations that we've spoken about today. I think on a personal level, one thing that always really strikes me is the incredible waste in construction. You think about how many houses are knocked down, those materials all go to a disposal site, they're not reused. I think there's a massive opportunity, and I think Germany has led here, to be honest. But in England, we also have a lot of old housing stock. So what really strikes me, and I keep thinking about, is it's ridiculous how much we're wasting every time we either renovate or build from fresh. So I'd love to see us really focus on that.
Yep. Yeah, and picking up on that, so I imagine in 10 years really an energy supply to cities that is mainly electricity driven, and that there is no question around that any longer, yeah? Whether there can be some substitutes of gas or anything, it's electric, right? And we have the capacity and also cost reduction that we need to make it also sustainable when it comes to affordability. And secondly, I hope that we see an emerging geothermal capacity coming up, for example, in Berlin, right? Because I think that's something that we haven't seen. And the third source that is underestimated, we've spoken about it, it's really waste energy. Using waste energy more and more, making that natural and clear. I think that's something that I foresee and would expect. And why is that so important for me, where the energy comes from? Because, and that's my personal contribution to it, so my kids ask me, Mom, why are you leaving your cool job at a wind production company, Vattenfall, and why are you going to E.ON, and what are you doing there with cities and energy systems? Yeah, because it's so cool to be part of this journey and to really foster this even more difficult step, right? that is not only producing sustainable energy, but bringing that sustainable energy into the cities, into the core of our society, into our houses, right? And that will really make a change globally, and that's cool to work there.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your statements and very personal contributions. Thank you, the audience, and let's meet us here in 10 years. We'll see what will happen, and don't forget, it's on us to find the right solution and to act, and not to act in 2030, act today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steffen.
It's time to wake up.